Hold on to your ginghams, everybody. It's Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is called The Yellow Hen. A strange noise awoke Dorothy, who opened her eyes to find that day had dawned, and the sun was shining brightly in the clear sky. She had been dreaming that she was back in Kansas again and playing in that old barn with the calves and pigs and chickens all around her, and at first, as she rubbed her eyes from her sleep, she really imagined that she was there. Cut, 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 cut. That's the real words. Ah. Here again was the strange noise that awakened her. Surely, it was a hen cackling. But her wide-open eyes first saw, through the slats of the coop, the blue waves of the ocean, now calm and placid, and her thoughts flew back to the past night, so full of danger and discomfort. Also, she began to remember that she was a waif of the storm, adrift a treacherous and unknown sea. Cut, 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 what, cut. What's that? Cried Dorothy, starting to her feet. I'm a hen. Here we go. Why, I've just laid an egg, that's all, replied the small but sharp and distinct voice. Looking around her, the girl discovered a yellow hen squatting in the opposite corner of the coop. Oh, dear me, she exclaimed in surprise. Have you been here all night, too? Of course, answered the hen, fluttering her wings and yawning. When the coop flew away from the ship, I clung fast to this corner and claws and beak, for I knew if I fell in the water or bark, I would surely be drowned. Indeed, I nearly drowned, as it was, with all that water rushing over me. I was never so wet before in my life. Yes, Dorothy agreed. It was pretty wet for a time, I know. But do you feel comfortable now? What? Not very. The sun has helped me to dry my feathers, as it has your dress, and I feel better since I have laid my morning egg. But what's to become of us? I should like to know, afloat on this big pond. Well, I would like to know that, too, said Dorothy. But tell me, how does it happen that you were able to talk? That's like her second question, third question? After having this conversation with the chicken, she's like, oh, by the way. What? I thought hens could only cluck and cluckle. Cluck and clackle. I thought hens could only cluck and cackle. Why, as for that, answered the yellow hen thoughtfully, I've clucked and cackled. I've clucked and cackled all my life, and I've never spoken a word before this morning that I can remember. But when you asked a question a minute ago, it seemed the most natural thing in the world to answer you. So I spoke, and I seem to be keeping on speaking, just as you and other human beings. Strange, isn't it? Very, said Dorothy. If we were in the land of Oz, I don't think it would be so queer, because all the animals can talk in that fairy country. But out here in the ocean, we must be a good long way from Oz. How is my grammar? Asked the yellow hen anxiously. Do I speak quite properly in your judgment? Yes, said Dorothy. You do very well for a beginner. That phrase, as for a beginner, is kind of a slight. Fortunately, the hen probably doesn't recognize the sarcasm, but I thought the hen was doing perfect. I wouldn't have even guessed. Well, I'm glad to know that, continued the yellow hen in a confident tone, because if one is going to talk, it's best to talk correctly. The red rooster has often said that my cluck and cackle were quite perfect, and it's a comfort to know that I'm talking properly. Well, I'm beginning to get hungry, remarked Dorothy. It's breakfast time, but there's no breakfast. You may have my egg, said the yellow hen. I don't care for it, you know. Don't you want to hatch it? Asked the little girl in surprise. No, indeed. I never care to hatch eggs unless I've got a nice, snug nest in some quiet place with a baker's dozens of eggs under me. That's 13, you know. It's a very lucky number for hens. You may well eat this egg." "Oh, I couldn't possibly eat it unless it's cooked," exclaimed Dorothy. "Well, light a fire. Come on, Dorothy." "But I'm much obliged for your kindness just the same." "Dorothy, you do have to eat." "Don't mention it, my dear," answered the hen calmly, and began preening her feathers. For a moment, Dorothy stood looking out over the wide sea. She was thinking of the egg, though, so presently she asked, "Why do you lay eggs when you don't expect to hatch them?" "Dorothy, this is a personal question, don't you think?" "It's a habit I have," replied the yellow hen. "It has always been my pride to lay a fresh egg every morning, except when I'm molting. I never feel like having my morning cackle until the egg is properly laid, and without the chance to cackle I would not be happy." "It is strange," said the girl reflectively, "but as I'm not a hen, I can't be expected to understand that." "Oh, certainly not, my dear." Then Dorothy fell silent again. The hen was some company, and a bit of comfort, too. But it was dreadfully lonely out on the big ocean, nevertheless. After a time, the hen flew up and perched upon the upmost slat of the coop, which was a little above Dorothy's head when she was sitting upon the bottom. She had been doing that for some moments past. "We are not far from land," exclaimed the hen. Where is it?" asked Dorothy, jumping up in great excitement. "Over there a little way," answered the hen, nodding her head in a certain direction. "We seem to be drifting toward it, so before noon we ought to find ourselves upon dry land again." "Oh, okay, they're not on land, hence not cooking the egg." "I shall like that," said Dorothy, with her little sigh, for her feet and legs were still wetted now and then by the sea water that came over the open slats. "So shall I," answered her companion. "There is nothing in the world so miserable as a wet hen." The land, which they seemed to be rapidly approaching since it grew more distant every minute. More distinct every minute. I read that wrong, and I was like, what? It was quite beautiful, as viewed by the girl in the floating hen coop. Next to the water was a broad beach of white sand and gravel, and farther back were several rocky hills, while beyond those appeared a strip of green trees that marked the edge of the forest. But there were no houses to be seen, nor any sight of people who might inhabit this unknown land. "Australia?" "I hope we shall find something to eat," said Dorothy, looking eagerly at the pretty beach toward which they drifted. "It's long past breakfast time now." "I'm a trifle hungry myself," declared the yellow hen. "Why don't you eat the egg?" asked the child. "You don't have to have your food cooked as I do." "Do you take me as a cannibal?" cried the hen indignantly. "A good point." "I do not know what I've said or done that leads you to insult me." All right, Dorothy's one friend, and she's already insulted them, which is pretty on par for Dorothy. I beg your pardon. I'm sure Mrs. By the way, may I inquire your name, ma'am?" "My name is Bill," said the yellow hen somewhat gruffly. "Bill? Well, that's a boy's name." Dorothy, having learned nothing after just offending the hen. "What difference does that make?" "Well, you're a lady hen, aren't you?" "Of course. But when I was first hatched out, no one could tell whether I was going to be a hen or a rooster. So the little boy on the farm where I was born called me Bill and made a pet of me because I was the only yellow chicken in the whole brood. When I grew up and he found I didn't crow and fight as the roosters do, he did not think to change my name, and every creature in the barnyard, as well as the people in my house, know me as Bill. So Bill I've always been called, and Bill is my name." "But it's all wrong, you know." "Dorothy, no," declared Dorothy earnestly. "If you don't mind, I shall call you Billina. Putting an Ina on the end makes it a girl's name, you see." "That can't be right." Alan Ina. No. Timothy Ina. No. No, Uncle Henry Ina. The Tin Woodman Ina. No. Nick Chopper Ina. No. Come on, Dorothy. Think. Think before you say things. Oh, I don't mind in the least, returned the Yellow Hen. It doesn't matter at all what you call me, so long as I know the name means me. Very well, Billina. My name is Dorothy Gale, just Dorothy to my friends, and Miss Gale to strangers. You may call me Miss Gale. No, I'm just kidding. It says Dorothy. You may call me Dorothy if you like. We're getting very near the shore. Do you suppose it's too deep to me to wade the rest of the way? Wait a few minutes longer. The sunshine is warm and pleasant. We're in no hurry. But my feet are all wet and soggy, said the girl. My dress is dry enough, but I won't feel real comfortable until my feet are dried. She waited, however. Then why complain? She waited, however, as the hen advised, and before long the big wooden coop grated gently on the sandy beach, and the dangerous voyage was over. It did not take long for the castaways to reach the shore, you may be sure. The Yellow Hen flew to the sands at once, but Dorothy had to climb over the high slats. Still, for a country girl, that was not much of a feat. And as soon as she was safe ashore, Dorothy drew off her wet shoes and stockings and spread them upon the sun-warmed beach to dry. And then she sat down and watched Billina, who was pecking away with her sharp bill and sand and gravel, which she scratched up and turned over with her strong claws. "What are you doing?" asked Dorothy. "I'm getting my breakfast, of course," murmured the hen, busily pecking away. "What did you find?" inquired the girl curiously. I can already tell where this is going, and it's Dorothy offending the hen again. "Oh, some fat red ants, and some sandbugs, and once in a while a tiny crab. They are very sweet and nice, I assure you." "How dreadful!" exclaimed Dorothy in a shocked voice. I was right. I'm good at this. What is dreadful?" asked the hen, lifting her gaze up with one eye to her companion. "Why, eating live things and horrid bugs and crawly ants. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Dorothy, you eat eggs and chickens." "Goodness me," returned the hen in a puzzled tone. "How queer you are, Dorothy. Live things are much fresher and more wholesome than the dead ones, and you humans eat all sorts of dead creatures." Whew, that's true and dark. "We don't," said Dorothy. "You do indeed. You eat lambs and sheep and cows and pigs and even chickens." "But we cook them," said Dorothy triumphantly. What difference does that make?" "A good deal," said the girl in a graver tone. Just can't explain the difference. But there is. And anyhow, we never eat such dreadful thing as bugs." A lot of people eat bugs, honestly. "But you eat chickens that eat the bugs," retorted the Yellow Hen with an odd cackle. That was the odd cackle. "So you are just as bad as we chickens are." This made Dorothy thoughtful. What Billina said was true enough, and almost took away her appetite for breakfast. As for the Yellow Hen, she continued to peck away at the sand busily, and seemed quite contented with her bill of fare. Finally, down near the water's edge, Billina stuck her bill into the deep sand, and then drew back and shivered. "Oh!" she cried. "I struck metal that time. I nearly broke my beak." "It was probably a rock," said Dorothy carelessly. Dorothy, this is... How many times, Dorothy? How many times? "Nonsense. I know a rock from metal, I guess," said the hen. "There's a different feel to it." But there couldn't be any metal on this wild, deserted seashore, persisted the girl. Where's the place? I'll dig it up and I'll prove I'm right. Billina showed her the place where she had, quote, stubbed her bill, unquote, as she expressed it. And Dorothy dug away at the sand until she felt something hard. Then, thrusting in her hand, she pulled the thing out and discovered it to be a large-sized golden key, rather old but still bright, and of a perfect shade. "What did I tell you?" cried the hen with a cackle of triumph. "I can tell metal when I bump into it. Or is that thing a rock?" I'm loving the sassiness toward Dorothy. She deserves it. "It's metal, sure enough," answered the child, gazing thoughtfully at the curious thing she had found. She had found? The hen found it. Dorothy! "I think it's pure gold, and it may have lay hidden in the sand for a long time. How do you suppose it came there, and what do you suppose this mysterious key unlocks?" "I can't say," replied the hen. "You ought to know more about locks and keys than I do." Dorothy glanced around. There was no sign of any house in this part of the country, and she reasoned that every key must fit a lock, and every lock must have a purpose. Perhaps this key had been lost by someone who lived far away, but had wandered on the very shore. Musing on these things, the girl put the key in the pocket of her dress, and then slowly drew on her shoes and stockings, which the sun had dried fully. "I believe," she said, "I'll have a look around and I'll see if I can find breakfast."